or Jessica. You guys are just good.
Hello, Facebook. We are coming at you live today. So today I have Ted Robeson on the call with me. And Ted is one of our awesome, wonderful volunteers. What we're going to do today is I will do an introduction and let you all know who Ted is. But then we're going to talk about salary and offer negotiating and negotiations. So negotiating the win-win. So Ted, I'm going to do an introduction here. So
Sure.
Mr. Ted Robeson has over 25 years in engineering management in the high-tech industry. He's worked at companies like AST Computer, NSA, National Security Agency, U.S. Air Force, Department of Defense, L3 Communications, and during the dot-com era, he owned an internet service provider company, TDM Associate. And then for the last 10 years, Mr. Robeson has been coaching LinkedIn for us, career connectors, and career coaching and counseling ministries at Saddleback Church, as well as a series of LinkedIn classes at universities, colleges, companies, and recruiting firms. Ted brings a unique style of passion, humor, and anecdotal experiences to his presentation on this great online networking tool, LinkedIn. He always says connections are good, but relationships are gold. And I am so excited to have you here to talk to us about negotiations, salaries, offers. So Ted, why don't you kind of just give us an overview of, why negotiations, why you're a little bit of your background, and why you kind of know what you're talking about when it comes to negotiations.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me today. My expertise is in LinkedIn, but in my job search coaching, one of my favorite topics for my clients is negotiation. And it's my favorite because it's at the end, and it's what I call win-win negotiations. It's a win for most people because they've gone through the trials and tribulations of interviewing and now won the position. And it's a win for the company because they've certainly now at ease because they've picked the right person that's good fit for their requirements and for their culture. I believe that people must negotiate because if you don't, sometimes later on during the years, you wish you had those. And sometimes you're leaving money on the table or benefits that you could have got on the table. And I believe it's necessary to negotiate. I love doing it. I've been doing this for 10 years. And even as a hiring manager, I always negotiated many, many times. And we all negotiate in life. We negotiate houses, cars, and even with the kids and spouses. So negotiation is a skill that we work on daily almost, but most people don't do it for salary or benefits.
Yeah, and I think, when people hear the word negotiation, I think there's a lot of fear involved in that. So what I'd like to do today is kind of walk through the negotiation process, how we can make it a positive win-win experience. And so why don't we start with that? Can you explain to us, first of all, typically when an offer is given during an interview process, if there's a typical, I know every company is different, but
of course,
when is an offer usually given and why is negotiation important?
Well, an offer is usually given after the round of interviews. And at that time, an HR rep, sometimes a hiring manager, but mostly a HR rep will call you and say, well, we want you to come to work for you, and here's the offer verbally. And I believe that that's a great thing because everybody's happy at that point. But I believe that you should always ask for the negotiation in writing and then take time to look at it. Take it home, get it in writing, take it home, and then plan on what you're going to negotiate. Don't just do it ad hoc right there on the phone. So I think that's important to most people. And I believe that at home, then you can play, I think, the what if game. What if they don't want to go up on salary, or what happens if they say this? And again, I think it's very important to negotiate. Most people are scared to negotiate because one, they don't know how. And it's an easy process, I believe. And it's a process where candidates feel negative. The company will look down on them for negotiation. And it is really just the opposite. Statistics have proven that it's a great percentage where companies expect you to negotiate. And so I think negotiation is important. You should always negotiate and go from there. Be positive. Have a positive approach to one thing that's important is when you start the actual negotiation on the phone, and you should always do it on phone, not email. Be positive. And that is, you want to say, you know, the company is great. It's my target company. I think I fit well. My skills match, and I've enjoyed the people that I've talked to. And then you go from there on the negotiations.
Yeah. So one of the things you said was, you know, you get the offer in writing and then you need to pause. So, you know, take it, get it home, you know, have time to reflect. I know that when people, especially when we're going through something hard in the economy, like we are right now, like we did 12 years ago, people just are like, oh my gosh, an offer, I'm in, I'll take it, sign me up. When do I start?
Let's go now.
Yeah. So what do you mean by pause? How do I ask for a few dawhat
Yes.
does that look like?
Well, most of the time they give an HR rep will call you and say, hey, we've decided to hire you and here's the benefits, and they verbally tell you. And pausing, just say, you know, I appreciate the offer, but I'd like a few days to think about this and maybe get it in writing. Can you email me the offer so I can see the whole package? And that way I can discuss that or think about that, and I'll get back to you in a few days. I like to delay as long as I can. Obviously can't do weeks, but maybe a few days to give yourself a chance to digest what they're giving you, and then plan the attack or plan the negotiation.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that.
Sure.
You said companies expect you to negotiate. Why is that?
Well, companies expect you to negotiate because they actually, it's a statistics. I don't like a lot of statistics because I think it doesn't fit into everybody, and everybody's different. Companies like you to negotiate because it gives them a feel how you are in negotiations, and a lot of the jobs out there requires you to negotiate. So if you're a marketing person or a salesperson, that's an everyday event, is negotiation. If you're a CPA or an engineer, maybe you don't negotiate as much, but companies love the fact that you do negotiate and want you to negotiate. Okay, it's a positive aspect.
So I get an offer, I get a verbal or
Yes.
a written offer. If I negotiate, can I lose the job opportunity?
Uh, no. Typically, if you negotiate, you might not get what you want on the negotiation, and that's sometimes a factor. But again, you have to practice on, if somebody says no, what's your next aspect or next step in that process. Companies, nobody loses their job because you negotiate. That just doesn't make sense. And don't forget, you're in a little bit of power here because the company went through a lot of expense, a lot of time in picking you out of the group to have you come in. So they don't want to go through that process any more than they have to. And you certainly are happy. But that's why a lot of people don't negotiate. I think it's 70 or 80% don't negotiate, but you should. Because most people, years later, they reflect back and go, I should have negotiated, because they hear somebody else did and they got more money or more time or vacation or whatever. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things I've heard from a lot of hiring companies is it kind of also depends how you negotiate. So if you go in demanding something like, well, I need 20% more, or I'm not working for you guys. I mean, now you're in the wrong position. But if you go in requesting or asking, hey, do you have any, wiggle room on this salary? Yes. Right? So tell us a little bit about kind of that process.
Yes. Excuse me. Companies always have a little bit of leeway. You can call it wiggle room. I think that part of negotiations, I think nobody's going to not hire you. You may not get that exact amount, but I think that there's other things. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say you go in for salary. I think there's three things on salary. One is I'd like to get, the offer was great. And again, you stay positive, okay? You talk about how good the company is and the fit, and you never, ever say something or else. Mm-hmm. Or you never bluff, okay? Jessica, I think bluffing is out the door.
Right.
So, oh, I have a better offer. Can you match that? And you don't. I think that's a bluff. And maybe that's okay in poker, but I don't think it's okay in any kind of negotiation other than that. But, salary, I think an example is maybe they don't give you the right salary, but there's three things I always tell my clients. It's not just base salary. It could be a sign-on bonus. You can talk about that. And that's a positive thing because that comes from a different bucket from the accounting process, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing, if that doesn't work, I think getting a performance review in 6 months versus a year, which will then up that salary and then give you a little bit more money, maybe a 10% or 15% increase at that time.
Yeah, that's excellent. So let's talk about the things you can negotiate. So people always think salary.
That's the top one, right?
Yeah, that's the top one. But there are so many other components on a total compensation and a package and a work-life balance perspective. And some people's salary might not be as important as maybe flex time or something else. So
exactly right.
Tell us what kind of things could I consider when I'm negotiating my offer?
Well, that's always a good question. And there's a litany of items you can think about. Do I think you ought to think about all of these that I'm going to say? No. But again, when you get the written notification or the negotiation and their offer, I believe that there's non-tangibles. Sorry about my light. There's non-tangibles in there, and that is how far is the workplace? Do I have to drive hours or 15 minutes? And what you said, is there a good work-life balance? And maybe the people I love and doing what I want to do. So salary isn't necessarily the major thing. So there's other tangible things that you can talk about. I think the sign-on bonus, like I said, is a good topic. I think stock, some positions require, a publicly owned company has stock benefits, and a lot of positions can get that. Vacation time is another thing that I love, because sometimes if you've worked at a company a long time, Jessica, you'll see that maybe you already have 3 or 4 weeks that you gain, but when you go into a new company, they only give you a couple weeks or so. And so you can negotiate maybe an extra week or 2 out of that. Flex hours is another important thing for sure. And that's a topic that a lot of my clients use because they love those flex hours. Shortened review period, your performance review can give you an increase maybe in 6 months versus a year when most people do that performance review. And then educational rebates. A lot of people go to work and say, hey, I want to get my master's or I want to do this. Will the company pay for that? And most companies do. Also, certification rebates are as important. If you want to be a project manager, maybe you want to get your PMP or Agile certification. And then relocation expenses. Things that I believe that are harder to negotiate are what insurances do you have and what do I get out of it? What's the 401? Because the company had to negotiate that in the first place. And you're probably not going to change that unless the company does. Also, I think those salary, a lot of companies have salary ranges, right? From a certain lower amount, let's say 80 to 110, for example. I think you don't want to go in. A lot of people, a lot of the books say, go in and want that 110. But I'm realistic. Companies will not hire you because it redlines you right away. And that means you come in, there's nowhere for you to go. There's no increase. So I think you're somewhere in the middle, depending on experience. I think the last thing on negotiation is, and the books say this and all the articles say, is you should be able to walk away. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure I'm a proponent of that. And I'll tell you why. It depends on the economy. And back in 2007 and 8, when I was in transition, it was hard to get a job. And I think similar akin to now, our economy is not great. We're in the COVID situation. And so getting a job is important. So walking away is probably not an alternative that I would consider. Maybe in a few cases, if you have many job offers, and this happens to be the lowest, then maybe you have that opportunity. But even if that salary doesn't hit where you think it's necessary, it still may be good to get the experience and then to move up in the company and to be successful that way.
Yeah, great insight. Thanks, Ted. Now, I want to throw kind of the gender issue out here. And so this is a harder one, but there's a disparity in America that women make less than men. There are probably a lot of reasons for that. But one of them, my personal opinion, is that women, we bring it on ourselves because the data tells us that men are much more likely by a huge margin, a huge percentage, to negotiate a salary than women are to negotiate a salary and offer. A lot of times, if you read some data on this, it's because women want to go improve themselves first.
Yes.
And then they'll pay me more when they see what I can do. Men go in confident, knowing they're worth what they're bringing to the table, so they'll negotiate right away. So talk about that. Why, what can we do? Why is the disparity there, and how can we overcome that?
Well, that's a great question. And I have many clients, women and men, and you're exactly right. Men typically are more confident at the negotiation tables. Women feel, and you said it right on, they have to prove themselves. But I believe that as an engineering manager coming up, and I can talk from experience, my women are my ladies that work for me, my ladies that work for me, they got the same amount of money that my engineering men did. So there was no discrepancy there. And most of them were very outspoken and they had a lot of positional power. And that's what I think as a lady you go into, you still have positional power. And that should be your mindset. Again, on a positive nature, but you should be confident. You should be confident in what you do, your value to the company, and that translates to negotiation and a better salary, better benefits that you can talk about. And you shouldn't have to prove yourself. And I believe that's the mindset that you have to have in negotiations. So I always talk about whether you're going for a job or a negotiation, act like you have a lottery ticket in your pocket and it's $5 million. I'm good, I'm happy, let's negotiate, and I'm confident. So I think you go in with that attitude, Jessica.
Absolutely. So when an offer comes back,
Yes.
and I see, let's talk just the salary right now, not all the other pieces of an offer, but is there a percentage or an amount that let's say the offer is $70,000.
Yes.
Like, how much over that can I ask?
Well, that's another great question. I love this. You should ask. I say another $5,000 or $10,000 is reasonable to do that. Maybe it's 5%, 10%, whatever in that range. I think it would be unreal to ask for $30,000, $40,000 over. I don't think that you're going to get that. I don't think you want to preface the negotiation with really high, and then expect them to get you down. I think you go with a realistic attitude and comfort for yourself and say, this is what I would like, and this is why I should get this. I don't think you want to go through all of your resume and talk about that again, but you should highlight your fit in the company, your experience, and what you're about and the value that you bring the company. And you want to make that succinct, okay? And then that would warrant, I believe, that extra bit of salary.
Yeah, really good insight there. So when do we start talking salary? This is just something it popped up in my head just now. Like, when we start in the first interview at the end, can I say, hey, let's talk, can you give me a range? Is that too soon? You don't want to waste their time, or, when do I bring it up? Or do I bring it up?
Yeah, actually, salary is a question that you're going to get at the first interview, typically by the, not necessarily hiring manager, but HR. HR is going to say, what's your expectation? My belief is you should say, I'd like to defer that question until you guys find out that I'm a good fit, and I find out that you're a company I want to work for. And I believe that's the key. I have three things, believe it or not, I tell my clients. One is, can we defer that question? That's the first. And sometimes HR hammers you, right, Jessica? They'll come and say, no, I want to know what you want. The next question is, you ask them the question, what's your range? And so if the first one doesn't work, you ask them the range. And obviously all companies have a range for a position. Okay, and they'll tell you it's 70 to 110, let's say. And then you'll say, yeah, that fits my range. So, and then the last question that pertains is, I think you should always know, even before you get to the negotiation table or before you start interviewing at companies, you should know what your position warrants, not only in the industry and experience, but your location. And there's many, many websites that can help you on that and give you a ballpark figure of the mean salary, maybe the low and the high, depending on location. And location is important. Arizona is certainly different than California or New York. And many of my clients have seen that. Okay.
Yeah. What are some of those sites that people can go to? Is it free? And what are those sites?
Yeah, they are free. Actually, one from my LinkedIn expertise, LinkedIn has a salary pull down, and you can see that. You can put your experience, your time, or I'm sorry, excuse me. You can put your title and then your location. LinkedIn is good. Glassdoor is great. I've used that. Salary.com, believe it or not. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a great site. I've been there many times. And also Indeed.com. I know that's mostly people use that for job hunting or searching, but Indeed.com's salary has an excellent also. So there's 6 or 7, and there's a lot more, but those are the key ones that I would use.
Yeah, so for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's bls.gov. Is that right? Okay, good. All right. Now, so my last question for you, I think, is what if the offer never comes back to somewhere I am happy with, do I walk away? Is there a point I say, well, this won't work for me, and I walk away?
Well, again, I think the books say yes. Ted says it depends.
It depends. Yeah.
And, you know, if the economic situation is bad, okay, it took you a while to get the job, you get the offer, maybe it's not what you want, maybe they're not willing to negotiate much, if at all, then I still think it's an individual thing. If you have other jobs that are prevalent, good. If you don't, then I think you take the job and then you go, okay, I call it a stopgap. With my clients, a stopgap, what that means is I'm going to take this job. I'm going to act happy. I'm going to act excited, but it's a stopgap. While I'm working, I'm going to be looking for my favorite job. You don't tell the employer that, but you say, hey, I'm going to be to yourself, I'm going to be looking and maybe I can find something better. But I think walking away is not the alternative I would do in this time that we're in the COVID situation, unfortunately. Back in 2007 and 8, I would never do that. And I know from experience, I've had many clients that have taken lesser paying jobs for the opportunity to gain that experience. And then they have, after 6 months, all of a sudden they were promoted to vice president. And now one of my friends that went in, went in a sales position, commission only, which was very small, no other money. He worked for 6 months and all of a sudden he's vice president. Now he's like a founder of the company. So that really helped him. And I've seen that many times, Jessica.
I remember back in the recession when I personally took a stopgap job. It was with the census. And you remember the census? And yes. I remember like that census was pivotal in what Career Connectors became, because they hired 3,000 people. Yes. And many of our people that came through Career Connectors. And so I know so many people that took that stopgap job, and it seriously not only provided and paid some bills during that time, but it launched them into careers they would have never had. And so I am with you on that. Stopgaps are really important, and you go in and you treat them like they're a full-time forever job, and you're happy.
I love it.
So Ted, thank you so much for being here with us today. Salary negotiation is one of the top questions we get at Career Connectors. And so thank you for providing all this guidance. Just to kind of wrap it up, some of the things I heard you say were, don't say yes right away, pause.
Right, pause.
And make sure you go in and you know the range before you go in and you start negotiations.
Yes.
But then also know the main things that are important to you. If vacation time, or working from home, or what are the main things for you to negotiate? Because you don't want to negotiate it all, but you want to think about what are the main things you want to have.
Exactly right.
Awesome.
Perfect. I love it. I think negotiation, everybody should negotiate. And my takeaways, I think, are the same as yours. Practice negotiation skills at home, with the family, and do that play. And I say it here again, play the what if game. What if they say this? What do you say? And know your worth. And you look that up, comparable salaries to what you get. And again, you always negotiate.
Thank you, Ted. Ted, you are so brilliant and experienced on LinkedIn especially. Where can people find you? How can they find you?
Well, first of all, I'm at Career Connectors. So I love that organization. I've been with you guys for 6 years. I love it. But please come out to my LinkedIn profile, because then you'll see who I am, what I do. And it's, just Ted Robinson. You'll see Mr. Link Me In. And that's kind of my code name, if you would, for what I do. But job search is key, and I have a passion in that. I've been God-driven for many years now, and helping people and working for Saddleback and Truly for career connectors. And it's a passion of mine. I'm retired from engineering, so I love doing this, and I can help, trust me. I've helped many thousands of people worldwide.
Thank you so much, Ted. We appreciate you being on today. Have a
Loved
great
it.
week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, all.